we're going for it.
I see we're streaming now. Oh, wait, should we have told the people on Facebook that we're on YouTube now?
Psych, bitches.
Like we're on YouTube now.
Okay.
All right. Well, this is the.
I have a link. I have a link to send them.
You know what? You know what? Might as well send them the link to this thing, and we'll get it going soon. And for those wondering what this is supposed to be a fantasy baseball podcast. It's supposed to be live.
This is all IT stuff now. We are IT professionals.
Let's see. This is a fantasy baseball podcast. Supposedly we're gonna do it on Facebook, but now we're gonna do it on YouTube because Facebook's being absolutely dumb. So yeah. Anyway, today's show was supposed to be about the very basics of fantasy baseball 101. As we on our last episode, we found out that a lot of people have never, ever done fantasy baseball before. So we're gonna start that off today, just doing the basics. And before I go on, again, I am your host, Felipe Malicio. Over there on the other side is Sean Flannery.
Yeah, there we go.
I was about to call you Connery again. I don't know why.
Hey, Connor's the middle name. You're close.
Yeah, Sean Connor Flannery over there. And I don't know. Why don't you start things off, Sean? I mean, what's the most generic advice you can give to someone who has never done fantasy baseball before in their life?
Watch the podcast whenever we can actually get it up and running.
Yeah, that's a great start. Anything else?
Find people that also enjoy it and ask questions. I think that's the number one way. Get on Twitter, find people that do it, that make content for it, and just ask questions.
Or just ask questions. Also, try to get some of your buddies, some of your friends to get together, whether it be in real life or in various message boards and internet websites or Facebook. If you're in our baseball group, just post it out there. Hey, does anybody want to start a fantasy baseball league with me this year? I mean, that's the way we used to do it in the olden days, Sean.
Yep.
And if not, you can always try a public league and risk the issues of joining a public league. They're fun. I mean, that's how I started my keeper league from 20 years ago. Was just from public leagues, just taking the best owners, and that's what we call people who play fantasy baseball. We call them owners. So if you're in a league, you're an owner. Sean's an owner. I'm an owner. We're all owners if you're in a league. It's that simple. But yeah, that's how we started our keeper league from 20 years ago. Was me just playing on like 20 different leagues and just taking the best people out of each league. And we formed a super league, and we've been at it for like the last 20 years, and it's been fun. It's been great. And now same thing. I started this other keeper league with Sean and a bunch of other people on our Baseball Live Facebook group, and it's been brilliant. It's been great. And we're starting a keeper league soon. So it was a yearly league. Now we're taking that next step. It's really like marriage, isn't it, Sean? You go from just a yearly nightstand to a
yearly nightstand.
And now
that's what we'll call it.
And now it graduates to a keeper commitment.
Keeper commitment. So you have a baby. If you want to have a baby in fantasy baseball, you play Dynasty, and then the team becomes your baby.
Yeah, you better put a ring on it too, because it's all about winning.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's the basics of the basics. So for those who are veterans, this is like kiddie stuff, fundamental stuff, but this is more geared towards people. Like I said, we found out a bunch of people have never played, so this is one way of doing it. And ESPN is the most popular. I think is the most popular website on the planet in terms of fantasy. Yeah. It's so easy. It's very user friendly. It's so easy, even a caveman can do it. And what you end up doing, what you have to do first is figure out, okay, do I want to do the private league and create my own league and my own? That's the other thing with ESPN now. Is so much customization, right? So many things you could do with ESPN, and you could try to tackle that on your own, or you could do a public league and take chances with strangers. I don't know, Sean, you ever do public leagues, or when's the last time you did a public league?
I usually try and do, I believe last year I did 2 or 3 ESPN public leagues, and I believe one of them I cared about because I actually was there for the entire draft. The other one I missed the first few rounds, but I was able to like cobble together a team And while basically everyone else in the league, I'm pretty sure, had given up on their teams by the All-Star break, there I was making the waiver wire ads in a very uncompetitive league, just trying to get back in it, just for nothing but bragging rights.
Nothing boosts your confidence more than winning a league where no one else is trying. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, man. It's like, yeah. Like, I mean, man, can you imagine if I actually got with people that actually give two shits about this? I'd still kill them too. Like I'm killing all these other geezers who gave up a long time ago back in April. So, I mean, and that's the thing. That's the risk that you take when you do a public league, right? Because a lot of these people like to mess around and just play around with, like, well, I think I'm going to draft Derek Jeter in the first round and see if I can get anybody to mock me for doing this. or that's it. They just treat it like their own personal mock draft for their real leagues, which is not fair.
Yeah.
But, I mean, those are the risks you take. But, you know, like I said, I started in public leagues back when I was a teenager, and 20 years later, now I'm you know, playing with a bunch of veterans and backstabbers and and real assassins, and the present company not included. But that's one way to do it. Another one that you have to look out for is the scoring league, right? And it used to be like either you do head-to-head points or you do roto league. At least back in my day, as I kind of age myself. But now it's like all sorts of things with the customization available to everybody on the free websites. You no longer have to pay a premium to do all these customization on your league. I mean, even our league, we started on the ESPN website, and you know me, if it's an option, I'm gonna utilize it. I'm gonna take advantage of it, and I'm always gonna be there to throw wrenches at you and see if you guys can like figure out which way to go. I mean, what did we end up doing? Like a 10x10 league at the end?
We started off 10x10 last year. We did 11x11, and are we sticking at 11x11 now? I mean, it's really a wild west kind of head-to-head categories.
Like I said, hey, if you're gonna give me the options and I don't have to pay a dime for it, I'm taking advantage. Like I'm taking it. Why only settle for a few categories when I can get all the categories? So that's one way to do it. But there's the main two ones are you either do head-to-head or you do rotisserie style. And Sean, go ahead and tell the folks the difference between head-to-head leagues and roto leagues.
Roto always seems to be the traditional fantasy baseball. And of course, me being the traditionalist that I am, the first few fantasy baseball leagues I played in were head-to-head leagues. Yeah. And so now every time I try and go back and dip my toes into the roto pool, I feel very uncomfortable because it is a very different strategy from head-to-head points or even head-to-head categories, which is similar to roto, but still at the end completely different because traditional roto, you're looking for year-long numbers. Meanwhile, in a head-to-head roto, you're looking to ride the hot hand so you can win that week, much like, fantasy football.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I started doing head-to-head fantasy points, right? Not the categories, not the rotisserie style, just the head-to-head points league, because it does feel like football, even though basketball was my first fantasy sport that I played. But I only played fantasy points. I only played fantasy points in basketball. A point for a bucket that you scored, 2 points for steals, 2 points for assists, and that's what got me into fantasy point baseball. I tried doing rotisserie a couple of years back in the olden days, and I did not get into it. I didn't like it. I don't know how people can still play that. But hey, that's your thing. You feel. I can see how people feel rewarded for a job well done because you're being rewarded for going the entire year trying to accumulate stats, as opposed to like what you just mentioned, that blitzkrieg effect of trying to get that good week, that 1 week against an opponent. And of course, it's not just weekly. There are leagues that go daily. Sean, you're a big fan of daily leagues?
I just started my first daily league, and it's actually in a 30-team league. And we have 5 starting pitcher slots, and it's daily. So you have to really target the platoon bats. Like last year, I was able to pick up Jordan Luplow, who had an OPS over 1,100 versus lefties. The guy just sat on my bench, but if he was facing a lefty that day, I could put him in and then take him right back out the next day. Also in a daily league where we had to have 5 starting pitchers. Well, we didn't have to, but you had 5 starting pitcher slots. Guys like Ryan Stanek and Chad Green, who were used as these openers, you could put in theory, you had up to 9 pitchers, relief pitchers or openers all going. So even the days that a starting pitcher wasn't going, those openers and those guys that had dual eligibility, you could use and still get points for them.
Yeah, and that's the fun about the daily leagues is that, when off a whim you start some, lack of a better term, you start off some scrub that never does anything for anybody, but maybe that's the game that this scrub gets you a complete game, and that's the reward of playing daily leagues. It's a little bit different in weekly leagues, and that's one thing I always tell people. It depends. When people used to ask me, "Hey, you want to join my league?" Sure. The first thing I ask, is it a weekly league or a daily league? And that's something you got to like commit to.
Daily leagues are a huge commitment. I would find myself, an hour before the usual start time for the East Coast and Central Coast games, clicking on player profiles. Luckily, the one site that it is on, Fantrax, if someone's put into the starting lineup, shout out to the guys over at Fantrax. This is awesome. If a guy's starting that day, it puts a green dot next to him and actually shows where in the lineup they're batting. So if you have a lot of guys that are active in the lineup, you can actually see, hey, do I want to start the guy that's batting second or third, or am I going to bat the guy that's batting seventh or eighth? So it's a nice little feature, and it has a red X next to him if they're not in the lineup. So it does make that whole daily commitment slightly easier. You don't have to hunt down daily lineups because Fantrax gives them to you.
And that's the other thing that people always are intimidated by fantasy baseball. Oh, the season's too long. It's too many players to keep track of. I don't have that kind of time because it's on every day. There's a game going on. And it's like, all right, well, don't do daily leagues. Do a weekly league. And people are like, what? There's weekly leagues now? What's going on? Yeah, and I've been doing weekly leagues like almost exclusively for almost a decade. And the only time I ever do daily leagues is when I pick up on a dead team and I take over. And I know you could like set your lineup in advance, but if an injury happens, then you got to redo all that stuff that you did last week. And it's a real inconvenience for me. I try to avoid those as much as possible. But if you're into that type of stuff, if you are going to commit to looking at your lineup every day and making sure that all your players are healthy and they're starting lineup like Sean just mentioned right now, more power to you. I'm not going to stop you, but you want my recommendation? Don't do it. It's not worth it.
Granted, if this is a paid league, so there's 4 or 30 of us, and I think we all paid like $25, $40, something like that. And so there is an investment, hey, I need to stay committed to this. I have money on the line, especially when you have 30 people buying in. That's a nice little pot at the end. So it's an incentive to stay committed to it.
Yeah, and that's another good point of good job of pointing that out. If you decide to by some chance get like 10, 11 other people involved in this, do you want to get money involved or not money involved? I mean, You could play for free, or you could, make it, a sweet deal and play for money, which that brings its own thing. You got to figure out who's going to collect the money. Can you trust that person to collect the money? Which website are we using to divvy up the funds or put the funds in? I know there's plenty of websites, like I believe LeakSafe was one of them. I haven't used them in a long time, but there's one where you put the money, everybody puts the money in there, and no one is allowed to. Well, I guess one person can touch it, but it keeps that person accountable by making sure that money only gets touched when a winner is declared, or when
Fantrax is the same way. Everyone pays it into Fantrax. Fantrax holds it and then disperses the funds based on the rules of the league.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Perfect. I mean, obviously you got to pay for that type of stuff. You got to, but it's worth it if you're like.
And I think that's one of those things. It keeps people invested, and it keeps the competitive level high even late into the years. Because that's where I notice with a lot of public free leagues is you get around the All-Star break and it's just gone. It's done. Now every now and then you'll find 1 or 2 owners, and maybe you try and find a way to reach out to them and carry them over into a league the next year until you've assembled 12 people. I mean, that's one way to go about building a league, but there's several different ways you can set it up. So.
Yeah, and of course, like I said, to go back to the scoring types, there's also, if you don't like points because you think it's too fluky, there's also the categories leagues that you can try to do. Like we just mentioned, our league is an 11 by 11 categories head-to-head league, and you can either do every category that you what would you call it?
Think is important or no?
No, just to figure out a winner. Like there's ones where every category counts as a win.
Yeah.
And then there's like you got to win the most categories to get the win.
Yeah, that's ours. Sense. That's ours.
Yeah, ours is you got to win the most categories to win. But there are other leagues where if there's 22 categories to use, you have a chance to go 22-0 that week. which is crazy. But
I was saying, I want to say in one of in our league together, I had one which was 20-2 or 18. I had a couple of 18-4s and maybe a 20-2, and then I got blown out the next week. That's just like the volatility of week to week stuff compared to Roto. But at the same time, I prefer week to week head to head over Roto.
Yeah, especially when it's like 22 categories like ours, because there's so many things you got to account for. You just can't sit back and just say, oh, well, I'm just gonna stockpile on pitchers, or I'm gonna stockpile on hitters. And you gotta account. That's why I built it that way. Yeah. So people are thinking fair and balanced, as opposed to, well, I'm just gonna be strong on this thing, and my strong suit is gonna carry me all the way through the season. No, that's not how it works. At least theoretically, it shouldn't work that way. So, like I said, many options are out there for people who have never done it before, but just got to figure out what's the best that suits you and go from there. Obviously, number of teams is another thing you got to decide. 8, 10, 12. If you do more than 12 and you're a first-timer, that's asking a lot. You could try it. It's a heck of a challenge, especially if you think that you kind of picture yourself as being a baseball junkie. But yeah,
that'll test your mettle real fast.
Oh yeah, and they'll humble you. I believe you me. I've seen people like, wait, we're still drafting. How I don't even know who half these guys are anymore. Yeah, well, you asked for it. You wanted a 20 league team, a 16 team league. This is what happens. You're looking at the Pittsburgh Pirates bench to figure out if you want to stick.
Colin Moran's looking real sexy.
I was just gonna say that.
Colin Moran's looking real sexy in the 32nd round, if you ask me.
Oh my God, that's the first name that came to mind. Like, oh, if you're gonna go for that Colin Moran guy, oh, that's that. See, you could tell that we've been at this for a while now. We're thinking,
and it's like the way you evaluate players is completely different too in head-to-head versus Roto. I mean, you have like a couple of guys in a traditional 5x5 Roto, average RBIs, runs, home runs. And I'm missing one there. Stolen bases.
Yeah.
It's like you value different guys. I mean, Starling Marte, Jonathan VR, these are guys who aren't, who you would think great players, but in a 5x5 Roto league, they give you most of those categories, and especially the very important stolen base, if you decide to chase stolen bases, which is another controversial thing when it comes to categories in Roto.
Another one is Joey Votto, who forever many traditional fans hated him because he doesn't hit a lot of home runs, doesn't drive a lot of runs in or whatever. But in fantasy points and head-to-head leagues, I mean, he doesn't strike out a lot. He takes a lot of walks. He's always on base. He's always getting a point. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's always contributing somehow. It's just not in the traditional sense of especially of a 5x5 mentality where are the home runs? Where are the stolen bases? How come he's not scoring any runs? Well, he's not scoring any runs because he's on crappy Reds team.
Yeah, and that's why some people would go to a 5x5 on base over average. And if you do that, you have some of these lower level guys like Shin-Soo Choo, Brandon Nimmo that instantly become, like people value batting average in a 5x5 Roto. If you go to on base, guys like Brandon Nimmo and Choo, who are these perennial 375, 380 on base guys, instantly become studs that you need to collect.
Oh, yeah.
But I was going through and looking at some Roto stats, and there were 12 players in 2019 that had 20 stolen bases and at least 60 RBIs and 60 runs. You had your normal guys. You had Yelich, Acuna, Story, Lindor, and Merrifield. The other 6, and Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez had a terrible year and still collected all of those. The other names that just seemed really weird, we have Elvis Andrus. I mean, this is a guy that would have been very useful to your team. You probably picked him really late. Yeah. Victor Robles, young guy in Washington. I was shocked that he had the 60 RBIs. Yeah. Jonathan VR is a guy that we mentioned. And then Danny Santana. And this is the guy in a lot of the podcasts I listen to personally. If you are in a Roto league, Danny Santana won you leagues last year. Mm-hmm. But if you're in a points league, Danny Santana was probably one of the worst players on your team because he struck out 30% of the time, walked only 5% of the time, and he just really, the value wasn't there because of how much he struck out.
And of course, if you're playing head-to-head, odds are strikeouts are a category that is held against hitters. If you're in a points league, that's negative points. So If he hits a home run and if he strikeouts 2 times, well, your 4 points just became 2 points. Well, I guess if you score a run and drove in an RBI, if it's a solo home run, that's 6 points. But still, I mean, that's a
lot of negative points over a full season.
Yeah, and again, it all depends on the value. But normally, strikeouts are worth -1 points, and you don't want that. No. Who was the other 3 guys you mentioned? Danny Santana,
Andrus Robles, Santana, and there's one guy that I like in both points and roto because he comes up on this roto list. But he also, I was looking at they had to have a sub 20% K rate and at least 10% higher walk rate. And then he had the 20 stolen bases, 60 RBIs, 60 runs. And it's the recently traded Tommy Pham.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was the one guy that appeared when I was looking at these numbers, appeared in both. And so it's like every now and then you find the golden player that it doesn't matter what scoring setting you're using, that you know what you're going to get from them. And I think it's very key to identify players like that.
I think he's on the decline.
I mean, how old is he
now? I got it somewhere, but
I know in our dynasty league, in our beginner draft, the beginning draft for it, he sat on the board for so long, and everyone, I didn't pick him. I wish I did, but everyone was just like, why is no one picking Tommy Pham? And he put the numbers out again this year, so I don't know.
He's entering his age 32 year.
32.
And I have him listed as that he's with the Padres. Is that because of the Hunter Renfroe deal?
That was the Renfroe deal, yeah.
Yeah, so I have him at 32. So, okay, so he's a year older than last year. I think last year might have been his, that's it. You're not going to get, I believe that you're not going to get that same production this year as you did as last year. And he's playing in San Diego, which I know they keep talking about, well, they moved the fences, but I have not seen any benefit, especially if you're going from the American League to the National League. I have not seen any benefits from that.
Yeah. I mean, 2018, he batted 275, 367, 464. And then this year did 273, 369, 450, and then cut his strikeout rate by 6%. So, and his walk rate was 12.5%. So that's still a guy I'm targeting. I know he's a late bloomer. He's a late start. And I feel like it'll still work for him because this is 3 years in a row where he's been a very good, very underrated offensive player. And even in a traditional roto league, like I said, he classified as being a 3-4 category stud. So he's one of those guys that, important in both scoring settings.
I had him ranked pretty high last year. This year, I dropped him to, looks like 24th, as a 24th best outfielder.
I mean, that's a top 30 outfielder.
That's the top 30, but I don't know. I feel like if I were to have an arrow, it would be dipping down. Yeah, and maybe I might consider guys like a Marcelo Zuna or like Michael Conforto, Austin Meadows, who I'm high on, even though he's left-handed. Andrew Benintendi, maybe he gets a bounce-back year. So those are the guys that I would probably draft ahead of Tommy Pham even in my rankings.
And it's just one of those things. I think people sleep on guys like Pham, and it's important to even the other guys, like Whit Merrifield, who had a good year. I mean, he carried me last year. But it's like, a lot of these, I feel like the stolen bases guys, some of them are losing value. But at the same time, you can still pick them up, and they'll help you in more than just the stolen base category, which is why I will never touch Jonathan VR because he'll help you in stolen bases, but he's going to tank most everything else. And I don't want I don't want that at all.
Although last year, I mean, he was pretty damn good last year. I mean, even in points leagues, I was just waiting to drop him because I drafted him, but only as a – of thinking that I was going to replace him soon. And every time I looked to replace him soon, he justified him being on my club, and he finished the entire year on my team.
Yeah, he had – I'm not sure if I want to say that was his career year after –
it seemed like it.
2016 or 2017. 2016 was the 62 steal year. Yeah, that was I picked him, I think, at the 1-2 round turn in the second round. Like in the top 15 overall, I was like, I just got this great stolen base stud. This is going to be awesome. And then he absolutely crapped the bed the next year. So I'm still very wary of Jonathan VR. I won't touch him. Somebody else can have him.
Yeah, I mean, I still have him like a last ditch effort kind of guy. Like if I have nobody else to go with because I waited too long at middle infield, that's the only way I'm drafting VR. Yeah, I still have him as my 12th best second baseman coming into 2020, and I have him as my 15th best shortstop. So, I mean, that's value right there. You're basically benching a backup middle infielder, and if you're waiting that long, I mean, that's a heck of a backup plan right there.
Yeah.
And it allows you. I'm sorry, it allows you to worry about other positions that you might value more, because you have that in your back of your mind that, well, at least VR is there for me at the end. So who cares?
Yeah, in a roto league, I would be much more willing to go after VR because the end season numbers. But in a points league, I just don't buy the hitting. I don't buy the batted ball profile. And in a points league, the stolen bases aren't as important as a traditional roto league.
James is asking, what do you think about Max Kepler?
Ooh.
And
I want. Let
go
me
ahead.
pull it up. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say I don't remember if Max Kepler actually was one of the many Twins players that had their BABIPs go through the roof last year. No, his is the exception. He was only a 244.
Yeah, 244. I mean, he was a 4-win player, hit 36 home runs. I do think he's gone the route of, I don't want to say selling out for power, but I always liked him even the last 3 years, which he posted below average WRCs or WRC plus. But it's like the walk rate was always high. The strikeout rate was reasonable.
He's a very patient hitter, by the way.
Yeah, a very patient hitter. And I think this year he decided to just start really driving the ball, being more aggressive on the pitches. He knows he can drive.
Yep.
If you were to ask me, though, if I'm taking the over or under on 36 home runs, 98 runs, 90 RBIs, I'm taking the under.
Yeah. I've always liked him. I always pick him up at the end of the year because he just goes on these hot streaks for some odd reason. I mean, the plate discipline is there, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And last year was like, see, I told you guys he was good. But my next question for you is, what do you make of these players who had all these career years last year because of the supposed juice ball and all that?
Jonathan VR. Sorry.
So I mean, how do you account for that? I mean, Kepler is one of those guys who looks like he's on his way down for 2020, but I mean, you have to assume that the ball is not going to be the same as it was last year. What's your thoughts on that, Sean?
I think some of the hitters will still be very good hitters. I think there are some question marks, especially like the smaller players that hit all these home runs, like VR. And Kepler's not a small guy. I'm pretty sure he's like over 6'3", 6'4". But Ketel Marte is a guy that worries me. His batted ball profile backed up how many home runs he hit. But at the same time, you can't help but wonder, I'm not buying Ketel Marte's home run totals. I'm basically taking the under on almost every home run hitter last year, aside from Nelson Cruz, who's just a consistent 30 home run. Donaldson, I think, will hit 30 home runs again, especially in Minnesota where the ball was just flying out last year. So,
yeah, I guess that's a good way of putting it. Like the established stars that have done it before all this stuff happened, you guys should probably assume they could do it again. But the Max Keplers of the world, the Ketel Martes, I've always liked Marte. I never thought he had it in him to do what he did last year.
Yeah.
So
I want to say I was listening to a podcast and they listed off his home run totals in the last 4 years, and it was just silly. I have it pulled up. He hit 2 in 2015, 1 in 2016, 5 in 2017, 14 in 2018, and then 32 home runs last year. That's more home runs in his combined for his entire career. Because he hit 19, 20, 22 home runs in his last 300 plus some odd games. And then he goes and hits 32 home runs. But he was a league winner for guys last year. I mean, he was a 7-win player. That's like the craziest thing for me about Ketel Marte.
I have another question from James as well. He's been on a roll right now. Well, not a question, more like a comment. And this is something I want to talk about because it used to be back in the olden days that patient hitters are more valuable in fantasy point leagues, right? Because all the reasons we just talked about. But lately, it seems like it really doesn't matter as long as it works, right? Isn't that the Ben Lindbergh book too? It doesn't matter as long as it works, whatever. But he's saying that patient hitters tend to be more hot and cold, whereas when I was growing up in the last couple of decades, is that the thought was that free swinging hitters were more hot and cold because they were so undisciplined and they were more they had a more tendency to strike out more and obviously drop your batting average, drop your production. If you're in points leagues, negative points in strikeouts, no points in walks or on base. What's your take on this new modern baseball that we're experiencing now?
In that exact thing, as a Mets fan, there's four names that automatically come to mind that were all very patient hitters, very dangerous hitters, but relatively streaky hitters. I mean, most Mets fans will say they were extremely streaky, but if you look at their month-to-month numbers, they're actually pretty consistent. There'll be like a week or two where they will just tear the cover off the ball. Lucas Duda, Curtis Granderson, Michael Conforto, and even Brandon Nimmo to an extent. All left-handed hitters that all walked a lot and all hit for pretty good power. So it's one of those, I think being a passive or, not passive, but a disciplined hitter leads you to not swing at a lot of balls that maybe you could hit for a double, or just a base hit. But instead you take the pitch looking for a better one, and that leads to maybe a strikeout, or you never do get a pitch better than the one you just had.
Yeah, and that's
you work yourself into a corner almost.
That's pretty much it right there, Sean. As I mean, that's what I've noticed as well. The most patient hitters are also the most frustrating to look at because they just seem to just sit on good pitches, and they're just been taught for years that no, you sit on a really good pitch, the one that you could drive. You make them pitch what you want them to pitch to you, not the other way around. And it seems like that thought has kind of gone away. I mean, we have players like Javier Baez who just swings at everything and is very productive.
Tim Anderson last year.
Tim Anderson's another one, yeah. So if you play for the Chicago Cubs or White Sox, you're a very impatient hitter. But odds are you're going to be successful. Like who's another guy? Like Luis Robert, or I think Eloy Jimenez is on the border, on the cusp.
Yeah.
And it used to just be only a handful of free swinging hitters can get away with that, like a Pablo Sandoval or a Adam Pac-Man Jones. I like to call him Pac-Man. I don't care.
But Vlad to an extent.
Yeah, and I think so but for every one of those guys, you have like a very frustrating Avisel Garcia, who you don't know what you're to expect on that. Guys like that. But there's I used to have a list memorized, and I can't memorize it from like 10, 15 years ago. But regardless, it seems like it has changed now because instead of having to wait on your pitch, now you're just like, no, generate your own luck. It's not gonna. They know that you can't. They can sucker you with a sweeping curveball. They know that they can pitch you outside. So if that's the case, cheat a little bit. You already have the bat speed for it. Might as well just swing and see what happens. And if you're a Javier Baez, you could drive it to the opposite field. If you're a Tim Anderson, you could just bloop a single and not even know. It's basically like me playing billiards. Like I don't know how those balls are going in, but they're going in. Oh, but you're not
that's
calling
all
it.
that matters. Hey, that's all that matters at that
point.
But
you're not calling it. What are we, professionals? The ball's in. What do you care? The stripes, solidly hit. You mean? Shit. But I think that's where the new philosophy is going nowadays. Is like, if you're swinging too much, that's okay. Just listen. These pitchers are throwing 98 miles an hour anyway. If you can keep up with it with your bat speed, by all means, we're not going to stop you. And I think it has played well for certain players.
Yeah, it's definitely a skill that works for some, but not all. So yeah, it's something to go there. Yeah, if you were to, what would be the biggest tip you would give to someone, a new fantasy baseball player?
Wait, I'm sorry. What?
Like I was just looking at my list, and you asked me, but what would be your biggest thing in terms of like targeting players? In terms of
Okay, I mean, yeah,
that's what we were on. Looking at players and approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I always because I'm from that school of thought that you wait for your pitch and you drive like the Chris Bryants and the Kyle Schwarbers of the world, and you just met all those Mets players that you mentioned. Those are like some of my favorite players to try to target, the Confortos, the Nemos. Unfortunately, because of what I just explained to you, I got burned because I get those guys when they're on their down spell, on their cold spell, because of what we just talked about. Maybe they're too patient. Maybe pitchers have figured out that they're not going to swing at certain things on the corners, so they're just going to exploit that fact because their bat's going to be on their shoulder. If they could just be a little bit more aggressive, maybe we have some different results, right? But that would be like I talked to you about it last year as well when we were doing these podcasts regularly. Those are my ideal players, but there is such a thing as being too patient. I would rather have the patient hitter over the free swing at everything at my heels kind of player, but a nice little balance of, be patient and just know when it's time to be aggressive, So I'm always looking for balanced players in that regard. When it comes to approach, that's my theory right there.
Or even balancing out the team aspect of it. Select a few aggressive hitters, then select a few passive players, which is what I did last year with I picked Mondesi and Merrifield early and then rebounded by having guys like Harper, Conforto, and Nimmo to kind of help buoy the walks, because we did an 11 by 11. So the stolen bases and average were just as important as the on base and slugging.
Yeah, and yeah, like I said, balance players, balance approach to a team, balance on pitching, balance everything. That's the key, especially if you're in a league like ours. And it's, I have to assume that plays. Even though there are people who just, like I said, I know owners who told me, if you just focus on certain things and just build on that, then your strength is going to overcome all your weaknesses. I mean, that's a great. If it works for you, by all means, have at it. But knowing me, it doesn't work for me. I don't like that. I need to have that depth. I need to have that balance. I need to have certain players do certain things for me in the event that my top guys get hurt. If I'm losing my best player who can hit home runs and RBI, I like the idea that I have someone on the bench who could swing at everything and hit singles and generate his own luck, his own BABIP, as opposed to having, replacing Michael Conforto is Brandon Nimmo. Well, shoot, that's the same. It's Noah's Ark, right? It's the two of every animal, right? No, we don't. I try not to do that like I used to before in the olden days.
So earlier today on Twitter, I posted some of my very few followers and asking what would they say to beginning fantasy players. And this person recommended a 5-to-5 head-to-head format, which I've never personally seen. What would you think of that?
Sorry, what was that last part?
It was a head-to-head 5-by-5, just head-to-head 5-to-5 league.
Yeah, that's a thing.
As a beginner league for people.
That's not a bad idea.
So that means for you would be targeting averages, home runs, stolen bases, RBIs, and then for pitching, wins, ERA, whip, Ks, and
saves.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and then there was a couple other about. Let's see if I can find it. There was someone said he wouldn't touch pitching in the first round. That's something he never does.
Yeah, I think that was.
What are your thoughts on that?
It depends on the league.
That was in Facebook.
That was on the Facebook. Yeah, you're right. I remember that. It depends on the league. And wait, hold on. I gotta stop the show.
Buzzers.
We have a special guest. He's a colleague of mine. He used to write with me at XN Sports. He runs the Sportfolio website. He's a podcast partner of mine from the last couple of years. Every time I need a baseball partner, he's there at a whim's notice. It's the one, the only Mario Mergola. Mario, introduce yourself to the world, please.
I am here. This is pretty cool. It's cool to call in again. So thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thank you. And we're live on YouTube. I don't know if you noticed, but we're live on YouTube, not on Facebook. So, but yeah, we've had an active crowd so far. Oh man,
very cool.
And we were just Sean just asked me a question about what was the question again, Sean? Go ahead.
It was the part about the pitchers or the 5-by-5 head-to-head league.
I want Mario to answer this question about drafting pitchers in the first round. Mario, what are your thoughts on that?
I saw that on the chat. I will say I can't stress this enough because I actually enjoy it and I think it's important. If you could do a mock draft, do as many mock drafts as you can. And in the first round, take a pitcher. And then in the next mock draft, don't take a pitcher. And just keep going back and forth and see if you hate your team by the end of it or if you love it. Because I know that in a mock draft, people will, they'll take stupid picks and they'll stop being serious. But if you, you'll see what you're going after. And if you take a Garrett Cole in the first round, it does tell you when you're looking at your roster, okay, I can settle. I don't have to go crazy looking for a pitcher for the next 2-3 rounds. So I don't hate it. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I kind of like taking a pitcher, and you've seen it in the groups we're in. If the pitcher is so clearly above the rest of the field, I want to do it in the first round. I actually want a pitcher in the first round because I know that my ace will be better than most people's aces. However, and the number one reason why you don't do it, if you're not going to do it, is the same phrase that's always thrown around. You can't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it. And pitchers are fickle, and they are injury prone. And actually, I think last year, I don't remember if you talked. It was Chris Sale and it was Max Scherzer. And I don't remember. I know I was on with Felipe, but I don't know if it was before or after the draft. And I said to him, I don't trust any pitcher this year except Chris Sale and Max Scherzer, and they both ended up getting hurt.
Yeah, so, that was I believe that was last year, Mario.
It was last year. I just don't remember if it was before or after the draft, like if it was after, like we had done it. But I don't. I have done it way too many times. I take a pitcher if I don't have the top pick or one of the top 3 picks where I really feel I can't miss, then I will probably reach and grab a pitcher so that I don't have to fill that spot. If you're drafting in the second and third round, you can still make up whatever you do in the first round. But I really recommend, for your own sanity, do a mock draft, do a bunch of mock drafts, and just, even if you go 4 rounds, then you realize, okay, after this is probably not real. Like, what are you seeing after 4 rounds? Because a lot of times there are years where you'll pick a hitter first, you'll pick a pitcher first. You'll be in the 3rd round, you're like, oh, I can get another good pitcher. And then you're in the 4th round, you said, oh, I can get another good pitcher. So then you realize, okay, if I like the guys that tend to be in the 3rd and 4th round, I don't have to go crazy. So it's more of it's not so much about what you do in the first round, it's how will you set yourself up for the next round if you're going to be in a disastrous spot or not.
That's good.
I know it's not a direct answer, but I don't mind doing it is the real answer.
Okay. Would you rather have, Mario, Garrett Cole in the first round or have a combination of, say, Patrick Corbin and Noah Syndergaard in 5 and 7 or 4 and 6?
That's a really good question. Really the answer is would I rather have a deadlock for my first pitcher, because that's really, again, I only do it if I really believe that that's the guy.
Yeah.
Would you rather have a deadlock for the first pitcher and then you don't go again for a while, or 2 could be studs? That's a really good question, and I think, and this is again kind of a cop-out answer, I think it depends on how I'd feel about the hitters I'm passing on. Okay. So, if I'll end up taking the pitcher around 6 or 7 because I could probably have 5 hitters that I know I would like. So if I'm picking 3rd, I'm probably going to take a hitter no matter what, because I can pretty much guarantee one of those 3 is going to be great. And if you tell me that I can have a great hitter and Noah Syndergaard and Paxton, then I would want that. But if I'm in that middle to end of the first round, I'm not so sure I'm going to get I might be reaching for somebody. I might be reaching for a hitter without realizing it because of, who's to say I wouldn't take Cole there and then a hitter and then one of Syndergaard and Paxton. That's another way to do it too. It's where are you for your first pick versus who you're giving up.
Okay.
Yeah, I would rather have Cole. If those are my options, I would rather have Cole. I don't care.
The real question is, would you rather have Cole or the 5th best hitter? If
Nolan
you have
Arenado?
5 hitters you love. Yeah, Nolan Arenado he's an interesting one this year, but yeah, would you rather have Nolan Arenado or
plus those
Cole,
2 guys?
basically?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Listen, if you actually were to say that you're going to start with with Arenado, Paxton, and Syndergaard, that's a really good core. That's a really good way to do it. But you could also make the argument that if Cole is there, you have Cole, another hitter who's not Arenado, and one of those 2 pitchers. If you know, and I say no with air quotes, but if you know that you have the one pitcher that you can't miss on, it's really hard for me to pass up on him. I know you can always grab guys later, but man, pencil a guy in for 200 innings, it's just so valuable.
I'm telling you, man.
Especially deeper leagues.
Who's that one pitcher for you this year that you're believing in? I'm going to take predictions here for Mario and Felipe. Got to write them down.
Sorry, what pitcher do I believe in?
One pitcher. He was just talking about, the one guy that you're going to pencil in for 200 innings of ace level production.
It has to be Garrett Cole.
Garrett Cole?
I'm a big and I was just doing I'm just starting to do my starting pitching rankings right now, and I'm still conflicted whether I want Jacob deGrom or Garrett Cole at my number 1 slot for this year. Yesterday it Yesterday, I'm
Look
sorry.
at the background. Look at the background.
Oh God.
That's the guy you should be picking.
Says the Mets fan. No bias. No bias.
no bias whatsoever.
No, hey, I have DeGrom in my keeper league, and I'm probably gonna keep him again. I mean, he's rock solid too. But I don't know. This year, yesterday I had DeGrom number 1. Today I may have Cole number 1. It's 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah,
but
I agree. 100. Those are the only 2 guys I'm trusting this year.
But gun to my head, I'm going with Cole today, right now, at this moment.
For the strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's part of it. What about
you, Mario?
My only question would be, will the Yankees let him go 8 innings every single time he gets out there?
Oh, Jesus.
He's probably not going to go 8 innings every single time. And that, I don't know. But then again, I say that, I also say, and listen, I'm a Yankees fan, but I also say that with DeGrom, I don't know if he's going to throw 8 innings every time either. Like, I kind of think those are the 2 guys that are the, quote, safest, but also the guys who are not going to have as great. I mean, you can't possibly have as good a year as DeGrom had 2 years ago. And you can't possibly have as good a year as Garrett Cole had last year. So, like, to say that they're not going to match all-time great performances, okay, like, that's probably real. But they're probably the guys who are still going to be ahead of the pack. And, like, that's the whole, what do you consider a sure thing? I consider a sure thing a guy that even if he regresses, which I do think both of them will, they're still going to be so far ahead of your above-average pitchers that, like, if Cole finishes 3rd and DeGrom finishes 4th, or really both of them finish in the top 5, you probably won't be too upset if you took him with your 1st or 2nd pick. Like, those are okay drop-offs. It's last year having Scherzer and Sale really hurt you. That's the one thing you can't have happen. But if Cole steps back and doesn't strike out 300 guys and he strikes out 250, like, you're not going to weep over that. So it's probably Garrett Cole for me, but DeGrom is a close second. And neither one of them I expect to be, like, better than a Mike Trout. I just expect him to be better than Paxton, honestly, consistently.
And it's, I guess, one of those things because last year I was ecstatic to not have to draft Nolan Arenado because I felt I was going to be shoehorned. I had the number 4 pick, and I ended up picking Jose Ramirez. And he was one of those guys who had a disappointing season. But if you compare a disappointing season for a hitter like Ramirez to a disappointing season like Chris Sale, I feel like Ramirez gives you a little bit more. A disappointing hitter gives you a little bit more, or at least over a longer length of time than a disappointing pitcher. I'm not sure if that's me. What are your guys' thoughts?
Wow.
Like
I tend to agree with that statement right there, Mario.
You said you disagree with it?
No, I tend to agree with with Sean right there.
Okay, I'm pretty much in the same boat, and I wonder if it's more of a mental thing. I think it's because you can't skip a pitcher's start. Like, if you have, you get 33 of them. So if you have a struggling pitcher who's starting that day, you have to put him in there. So you have to ride that bad pitcher. I mean, I say bad, but you have to ride that struggling pitcher. You could theoretically survive with, like, if Jose Ramirez is providing batting average instead of home runs, like, you're going to take it. If he's driving in runs, you're going to take it. So you can take the bad with the good and kind of pick your poison if you're going to start him or not. You have enough spots. But if you took Chris Sale, every time he's going out there, you have to start him. So I don't know that I totally agree with it, but I don't disagree with it because of that premise. Like, you are, in lack of a better word, you are stuck with your pitcher. Yeah. So you can essentially, like, you can get production from other hitters that you could say, all right, I'm going to start him over Ramirez for a little while. But you're probably not going to get somebody, you're not going to get, 6 or 7 starting pitchers in your lineup that you're going to actually bench Chris Sale for. So you are committing to, I'm going, every start he's in there, he's on my team. So that's, I think, why, that's where your point really hits home, is you just can't avoid them being bad. You have to kind of ride with it.
I had a question regarding Noah Syndergaard. Is he bouncing back? He has all the stuff in the world to be a successful pitcher, top 10, top 5 even. I think I'm just biased like that, I guess. Is this the year that he finally puts it together and becomes that elite pitcher that I know that he could be? Or are we ready for more disappointment from him this year?
It's just, I look at his previous 4 seasons, 3.2 ERA, 2.6, 2.9, 3.0. And then you see the ugly 4.3.
Mm-hmm.
That's 5 seasons, or 4.5. because we're not counting 17 because he tore the back muscle.
Right.
But doesn't one just seem like an outlier? I mean, granted, like his xFIP even went up this year, so the worse ERA was a little bit deserved. But then when you go into a lot of his expected statistics and the arsenal, I do think, is he going to go back to being a 2.5 ERA guy like he was in 2016? I don't know. Do I think he's more of a three flat ERA than a 4 flat ERA? Yes, I do.
Mario?
Let me phrase it this way. If you're watching in May and Noah Syndergaard is pitching his like 5th game of the year and he strikes out 12 guys and gives up 1 run over 8 innings, will you be surprised in any way?
No.
I wouldn't either. And I think that's kind of the point. Like if somebody has a track record that they can go out there and dominate, I kind of think that I'm going to err on the side that they're coming back. Now, I say that, and I read a really, really interesting article on Fangraphs where it kind of showed what players do after their kind of injured season. And they actually don't bounce back as much as we think. We kind of all have that feeling, well, he'll figure it back out. He was hurt.
Right.
And it tends to be that they take a longer time to get back than we realize, and sometimes they never get back. And especially pitchers are dangerous in that regard. But, again, if I'm watching in May and Syndergaard is just carving up a team, I in no way am surprised by that. And he's a guy that, if you want to, he's going to get drafted higher than his current ADP because more people will think like that than think he's done because they do remember how good he can be. So he's going to be, you're going to have to pay up for him, but he's probably still a guy that even paying up, he will outperform. I'd say this, I'll be very surprised if he has a 4 or 5 ERA this year. Will that mean, like Sean just said, a 2.9? Maybe not, but if he ends up with like a 3.1, like that's what I'm looking for, and I would be thrilled and not surprised in the least. I'd be stunned if he's a 4 or 5 and just no good anymore.
I got Syndergaard ranked number 14th right now. Is that too low or too high?
I think that's just about right. Maybe 12. I mean, but then you're just kind of arguing semantics there because, like we talked about on the last podcast, Tier 1 seems to be disappearing and Tier 2 seems to be getting bigger. And I think right now Syndergaard is clumped in with a lot of the Tier 2 guys. Even though even coming off a down year, I think there's too much potential there. The stuff really didn't change. The command didn't change. And speaking of his command, one of my favorite Twitter follows out there is Alex Fast at AlexFast8. And he posted just a couple days ago, top 10 painters, highest percentage of 4-seamers on the corners. The top 3 guys, which is kind of the third guy shocking. First one's Kyle Hendricks, makes sense.
Yeah.
Second was Thor, and third was Robbie Ray. And when I looked at all of these, wow, Syndergaard threw that many pitches, like right on the paint. And so I asked him, I said, how many of Thor's were called for strikes? And he actually was able to respond to me back with the data. He said, Syndergaard falls to 58th on the list when you consider called strikes on fastballs on the paint.
These umpires, man.
Umpires are just give him his damn catcher. That's all he wants. Is it too much to ask for a catcher?
Oh. Man, so now I know why my league or my team went down the crapper last year with Syndergaard. These damn umpires, lack of catching. So that's very interesting. So, I mean, what's to say that, do we expect regression? Like that's going to balance itself out? I mean, do we expect any of that for this upcoming year then, or what? What do we take from that?
From just Syndergaard, or
just the fact that
from that missing call strike, you'd have to expect him to get better calls, right? You'd have to expect that one of the contributing factors to his worst season is something that was really out of his control, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then kind of the home run spike. He was a guy who, in his last 2 full seasons, 2016 and 2018, had a home run to fly ball percentage under 9%. And then this year it balloons up over 13%. So it's kind of one of those, we'll see if the rabbit ball comes back and to what degree. We'll see if any change in the ball brings his slider back, which he was missing as an out pitch early in the year. But he's an interesting guy to target in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I always do.
Especially if you get him at a discount because he's coming off of a 4+ ERA year. Like if you get Syndergaard at a discount, which I see in a lot of the NFBC, paid competitive drafts. I'm seeing Syndergaard go late 6th, early 7th rounds in 12-team leagues. And I'm just like, I feel a steal for him.
Yeah, I think that is too late for him, just straight up round wise. But I don't know if the season gets closer, if that's going to keep being the case. I feel like his price is going to rise. Again, I think it's actually worth paying up. But, I mean, I'm looking now, Fantasy Pros, he is ranked 22nd. Oh, sorry, he has ADP is 22nd among pitchers.
Oh, wow.
And he should be above the 22nd best pitcher by the time April rolls around and we're drafting. I expect him to be much higher.
Mario, I have a question for you. What advice would you give first-time fantasy baseball leaguers who might be interested in joining a league in 2020?
I saw a couple of the posts on the Facebook page, and there was a really good comment. Somebody said, every league I'm ever in kind of just loses interest. There are now leagues for everybody, and I think Roto World is a really good forum to find leagues. You want to find people who have like-minded plans. If you are just starting out, you probably don't want to do a huge dynasty league where there's 30 teams. You want to pick something that is going to be fun. And at the end of the day, and I said this to you, Felipe, whenever we talk draft, I draft like a crazy person.
Yes,
but I always say the same thing.
Never
I have
too
fun
soon,
when
Mario.
I'm doing that. Never too right. But I always say, I have fun when I'm doing it. So, if you don't go in with the expectation that you're going to just wipe out a league, aim to have fun. Pick some guys you actually like. And by I mean, enjoy watching them play. You don't care about their stats. If you're a Mets fan, and you think Noah Syndergaard is somebody you want to have because you want to root for him every week, here we are telling you he's going in the 6th and 7th round. Take him in the 4th round. Does that mean you're probably going to win? Probably not. You're probably going to end up blowing something. But if this is your first time playing fantasy, the number one rule of advice is you are probably going to make more mistakes than you realize. So at least make mistakes that you can live with. Don't take a guy on a team that you hate. Take somebody that you can root for. So try to find a league that's more your speed, like a smaller league. If you ever do a 10-team league, every single roster is really good. So that kind of helps stay in the league through August, because most of your players are going to be good. Now everyone else's team is going to be good too, but you're not scraping the bottom of the barrel to get people. So pick a small league, find, even if it's 6 people, just to get into a league and get the experience of drafting. And quite frankly, if you go into too big of a league, or if you go into too experienced of one, they're just going to try to trade and rip you off in every single way.
Yeah.
So, and then it becomes not fun. So you want to find a way that you're still going to be alive in July. So when people do start losing attention, you can at least kind of pick up the pace, which is another reason why, by the way, why I pick a lot of prospects, because I expected I could kind of manage my way through April and May. And then by June, I have reinforcements coming. So try to pick a team that is just not going to burn out in a month, and people that you will watch, you will tune in. If you take Syndergaard and you're a Mets fan who's never played fantasy baseball, you should be extra attentive to his 33 starts this year. And that makes it fun. Now you're thinking, as a Mets fan, I want to see him win, but as a fantasy owner, I also want to see him win. That's going to help me. So I actually think it's a silly comment, but it's what got me into fantasy baseball. Have fun. Pick guys you like. Don't pick guys you can't stand, because you have to root for them for a whole year, and it's a long season. Just go with the expectation you're probably not going to win, but you can enjoy the process of it, and then you get better. Honestly, it's a skill.
Yeah, I really like the 2 points you made. That was something I hadn't seen on a couple of my little online polls of do a smaller league to where you'll know basically all the players on the roster. You'll know them pretty well. They're going to be the premier starters on almost all the teams. And then you're going to make mistakes, so make the mistakes you can live with. That's like a life quote right there. That's not just a fantasy baseball quote.
Well, thank you.
So he's like a philosopher over here. But
Dude,
that's a really good drafting strategy. You're going to make mistakes, make the ones you can live with.
I'm telling you.
I felt like I made a mistake drafting Aaron Judge in our kickoff Dynasty League draft last year. I got him at, I think, 16th or 17th. Andrew O'Sullivan, he picked Yelich right in front of me. I was very angry. But I picked Judge, and this year, he had the injuries, but I go back and I look at his baseball savant numbers and even his statistics from this year, and I'm like, he was still really good. I just need him to stay healthy. And so it's like it was a mistake, I guess, if you go back and look at year one. But it's something I can live with because I didn't see the skill set change.
And I will say this: I've actually told Felipe on the podcast that I've listened to prior episodes where he has made a comment about like his past draft, and he said something like, "And I really didn't want to take that guy there." And I'm sitting in my car listening as just a listener, and I'm yelling at him. I'm like, "Felipe, then don't take him. Then don't take him." So like, if you're sitting there, like I'm as a Yankee fan, I will never own someone from the Red Sox, and if Mookie Betts is falling to me, and he might even be traded, I still won't do it because I don't want to. And that's, you want to say it's a mistake, sure, but it's a mistake I can live with. I would rather not have to root for Mookie Betts for the next 6 months of my life, and I'll just pick somebody else. So especially if you want to get into this and you want to have fun doing it, you really don't want to be conflicted. Like, yeah, you're going to have some guys playing against your team, but you don't want to take guys you just actively dislike. It's not fun. And this is supposed to be a hobby. This is supposed to be an enjoyable experience. And when you do that, then you start saying, like, okay, this is what I like. I like this part of it. I don't like roto. I like head-to-head and so on. So it's just, again, it's just stringing out the opportunity. Get in there, survive till August. And you're like, you know what, that was pretty cool. I drafted a team in March that didn't, destroy me. And I enjoyed kind of watching Noah Syndergaard pitch every, fifth day. That's try to aim for having fun. And you'll enjoy it.
Hey, that's sound advice right there.
Oscar, we need Margola on the podcast more often.
Hey, I'm telling you, man. Anytime I can get Margola in here, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Whenever he has the time for it.
I generally say yes if I can. Yeah, I never just flat out say no. If I could squeeze it in, I love talking baseball. This is
Yeah.
This is talking about fun. This is fun for me.
Oh yeah, every year I look forward to that one podcast where I'm just talking to Margola. Hey, so let's talk about our draft. And we also figured out you could tell a lot about a person just by the way he drafts or she drafts. I should say.
Our reigning champion was a woman now.
Erin, yeah, congratulations to her.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, Mario. Go ahead, and I'll give you the last word.
No. All I was going to say is I actually just enjoy draft strategy. And here's the funny thing. So I tell you how much fun I have playing fantasy baseball. I hate trades. I've said this many times. I get sick over trades. I hate them. So half of something I love, I absolutely despise. But I just make sure I really enjoy the draft process because I know that, when March comes around, I'm going to get a bunch of trade offers. I'm going to be pulling my hair out and actually angry. So during this stage where nobody can make me upset, that I actually then will take a guy before I think he should go because I don't want to trade for him later. I just want the guy now. Like, I just don't want to. We've all had that feeling where a guy goes right before we wanted him. And if it's the first round, that's a little different. But if it's like round 8, and the only reason you didn't take him is because you think it's, quote, too early, it doesn't matter because now if you really want him, you're going to have to pay more to get him. So just do it. Just go out and make the pick that's going to make you happiest because you're going to be miserable afterwards. So for me, I really never trade. I don't want to get in a position where I'm desperate, which happens sometimes, and I get mad at myself. So take some chances. Again, make a mistake that, that's on your side of it.
Sean, I'll let you have the last word there. I got to get your thoughts on this. What do you think about trades in fantasy baseball? You feel the same way Mario and I feel about them or no?
I'm always very conflicted because, you draft these guys. You draft these guys and you draft them because, like Mario said, you either like them or you want to see them succeed or you think they're going to succeed. And those are all these big reasons why you went out and drafted them. So why would you go and trade them away? I know sometimes it's better to look at just the sheer value trade-off standpoint, but I have a hard time trading my own players unless I'm getting back someone that I just really do like. I made the DeGrom trade last year, and I loved the DeGrom trade because I love DeGrom. But it's just one of those things is,
would you have had to pay? Like, if you would have had to pay up for him, would you have done it? If somebody came to you and essentially squeeze more value out because they know you like DeGrom, doesn't that put you that's a bad thing?
Yeah.
At its core,
you don't want to be taken advantage of. And that's why, it is, you have to learn when to say no. And of course, there's always a player in the league that has a bit of a homer thing going. I mean, hell, just accidentally, I ended up when I traded for DeGrom, ended up having Syndergaard, Wheeler, and DeGrom. Like I had Syndergaard and Wheeler. Like those were two guys. I said, okay, I missed DeGrom. Let me get these two guys. And then DeGrom was made available via trade, and I felt like it wasn't too much value. It was, Marquez, Muncy, Posey, something like that for DeGrom and 2 bits of trash.
Sounds like a nursery rhyme.
and so I felt like that was fair value. Would I go out of my way and overpay? I'd like to think not. But
but that's exactly.
But that push comes to shove, you probably would.
That's right, and I don't want to be in that position where I've got the people that said, "Look, I missed on this guy. What do you want for him?" And then they they rub their hands. They're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get this guy."
They know they got you then.
Exactly.
This guy really wants them.
Right, so I don't want to be. In fact, me ever offering a trade offer is usually a bad sign because people know I don't do it. So it's. You kind of tip your hand in doing it. But there are people who not only love it, but who, they win leagues because of how well they trade. And they're usually not the worst lopsided trades, but, I give them credit. For me, it just takes – I put a lot of mental power into the draft, and you'd have to put as much mental power into trading. And I can only do one. My brain is only so big. So I have to put it into the draft, and I can't figure out – once the season starts, I'm just not going to, somebody else is probably going to be smarter than I am, and I can't take that risk.
It's a necessary evil. I get it. Like, in my experience, you need that one key trade that puts you over the top, and I get it. I'm just with you guys. I hate it. I abhor it. I hate the fact that I'm in the middle of a pennant race, and like, all right, well, I don't know if I believe in this team can take me all the way to the championship, so now I got to figure out who I'm going to trade with and what do I want from them, and you got to relearn. Okay, well, I love the players that are on my team. Now I got to relearn how to love other players from other teams. As silly as that sounds, it is, like Mario just said, it is like a mental hurdle you need to get over. And last year I made a bunch of trades in my keeper league, and I made the playoffs. Only 4 teams make the playoffs, unlike my leagues where like everybody makes the playoffs. But only 4 teams made the playoffs last year in my keeper league, and I was one of the fortunate ones to make it. And my team just wasn't good enough to win the championship, and I gave up a lot of draft picks. I gave up a lot of players that I like. I gave up Casey Mize. I know. I threw the kitchen sink at that. At least I wasn't going to sit on my laurels and just say, "Oh well, I didn't try. I didn't make the play." I really went for it, and it didn't work because But it is. I had to get myself from that point, from point A to point B, to like, all right, Felipe, you can't just sit on this team. You need to bring reinforcements from other crappy teams, and that's what happened. But I am just like Mario. I am like Sean. I hate them. And like Mario said, there are certain people that live for that. They'll blow by the draft, pick whatever players, and because they know that they're gonna go into the season and just try to make as many trades as possible because they get. And it's also like an addiction to these people. It's sickening, Sean. It is a sickening thing.
So
let me ask you both. Let me ask you. Sorry, I have a question, but if you're gonna piggyback off, I'll let you go.
Go ahead.
Do you guys find that you draft the same players in all your leagues, or do you scatter them?
No, that's true. I've tried it, and I can't do it. I end up drafting the same guys.
So doesn't that speak well to the fact that we are people who don't like to trade, and at the same time, when given the opportunity to start fresh, we still land on the same guys? Like, it's a mental thing, and it's not it's not necessarily a problem if you believe in those guys, and and I will say this too. My draft group, my player pool from this year is wildly different from last year, wildly different from the year before. It's not always the same guys. But once I commit to those people for, 2018, 2019, 2020, whatever it is, those are the guys I want to get in every draft. Even if I don't want to get them, I end up with them. So I think there is an attachment to them. Like, you've committed 3 different leagues to, say, Jacob deGrom, and you missed him in the 4th. If he's available, you are more inclined to trade for him. And if you have him in that 4th league, you're less inclined to deal him away. I think it is more of the mindset of I put in the work beforehand, and I feel I'll be at a disadvantage later. But it's also just a straight up mental thing. Like what you own is more valuable than what you could acquire. Like that's how people think. So you're intentionally owning the same people in multiple leagues. Felipe, like, isn't that? Do you? I think you do that too, right? Like, and that's one of the reasons why you don't want to lose.
I literally started this baseball life. Well, it was supposed to be the Matt Bushnell, the Men Up North podcast league, and then Matt left and joined my keeper league. But I literally started this league of ours, the one that we're all three of us are involved in. I literally started it just so it could be a yearly league, so I could get me away from just because in my keeper league I draft for keepers, right?
Yeah.
And
okay,
well, this is a yearly league. It's a categories league. It's going to be different. And just like you said, I end up drafting almost the same players anyway, and I end up drafting the same way I would draft. That's why I'm switching to a keeper league this year because I'm already just to make my life easy. Just I'm gonna draft if I'm gonna be dedicating my whole offseason to getting ready for the keeper league. I might as well start a keeper league with you guys as well and just make my life just so much easier.
80% can overlap from your other teams too.
Yeah, and only because we have more roster space in this league, and I'm in this league as opposed to the other. The other league is a little smaller than this one, but that you're right. It's only 80%, but probably would be closer to 90% if the other league had more roster spots for each team. Sean, you have anything to say about that?
Just about the going from keeper or year to year.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, the irony of me being in a keeper league and then going in a yearly league to maybe
going
change
back
things
to
up.
keeper.
No, just to change things up with the rosters and the players that you draft. I mean, you obviously just mentioned that you probably end up drafting the same players too, right? No matter, regardless of format, regardless of scoring system.
Yeah, it's usually I'll have a strategy, and the gambler in me tells me it's a terrible idea to draft, the same guys every single time. I mean, you're not spreading your success rate out. Doing that? Yeah, go for it.
You're not spreading your sportfolio.
I like it.
But no, you're not doing that. But at the same time, you're going with something that you've planned to do. You obviously, if you like a group of guys, there's a reason you like that group of guys. I would hope it's not just something like you like the way they look or their name or something like that. You've looked at their numbers and you found that there's a reason you like these guys. And if you're going to put in the effort to believe that and research that, why not double down on it?
Guys,
money be damned. Double down on
it. It's been a wonderful evening. It's we've been at it since early in the evening because of technical difficulties, but I'm so glad we were able to put this show and answer some questions from our viewers. I greatly appreciate everybody listening in today. But we must bid our goodbyes. Mario, thank you so much for joining us this late in the game, this late in the hour. Your wisdom is always welcome here, my friend. I always appreciate.
Thank you. Can I throw one quick thing out there?
Go for it.
Might as well. Why not?
a cool announcement, Felipe, that you don't know yet, so you'll have a live reaction here. I'm going to be writing for Fantasy Pros this year for baseball season.
What?
So it's pretty cool. I still have this portfolio stuff that obviously I'm doing, but I'll be contributing. I think weekly to Fantasy Pros.
That's awesome.
If you want to read my stuff, it'll be there. Yeah, it's a really, really cool experience. And I'm starting with obviously draft prep because it is what I love most. So there should be an article out soon. I'm not sure when my first one's coming out, but it's written, it's ready, and it's gonna be soon. So I figured you'd like to learn that.
Oh man! So not only did we just have Mario Margola, who owns Portfolio, come in, we actually have a real expert from Fantasy Pros.
We had a Fantasy Pro.
Yeah,
that's the best part.
Because then you read my stuff and then you take my guys and I get really upset. So I don't really tell anyone in the leagues I'm in. I keep that part a secret. I tell you afterwards. I'm like, oh, here's what you should have done.
Wow, dude, you being on being on Fantasy Pros is like me being on Fantasy Pros. I'll vicariously live through you, my friend, anytime.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you for having me. Honestly, I enjoyed this, so thank you both of you.
All right, thanks, Mario. Sean, any last words for our viewers out there?
See you in a couple of weeks.
And congratulations once again to you getting married recently as well. And,
that's my prison sentence.
Yeah, there he's shackled already. He's not letting go of that thing for a second. If he knows what's best for him. Guys, thank you so much for coming and tuning in today.
She just walked in.
I see what you're doing. Yeah, great timing. And for everybody else, take care. We'll see you guys soon.